Hi, my name is Mac.
And I'm Aaron. Over the next 5 minutes, we're going to show you 7 of our favorite installation tips.
We picked these 7 because they're all problem avoiding issues.
Well, that and because they'll help extend the life of the new shocks and struts that you're about to install.
These 7 tips are going to help you avoid some very common mistakes that can end up causing suspension noises and maybe even complete unit failures, like fluid leaks or damage to the new parts you just purchased.
The first tip is real easy to do, but it's often overlooked. Did you hear that? Don't throw the box away until you've checked for any included attaching parts. If a new threaded nut, washers, or bushings come with a new shock or strut, then they need to be used in place of the ones you've removed.
And why?
Well, because they're designed to work with the replacement part. The old components that you've removed may not be the same, and they could cause damage to the new unit. So the first tip is always test the new nut and stud threads by hand and be sure they match. And always inspect and use any included hardware that's in the box.
The second tip is quick. The highly polished shock and strut upper shafts must be protected from nicks and scratches during installation. Any damage along this shaft as it goes in and out of the cylinder is going to damage the upper oil seals. The result will be a hydraulic fluid leak and a very quick failure. An even worse situation is when someone uses vice grips or pliers on this shaft. This will definitely destroy the part.
Now let's go back to the stud and nut design on either a shock or a strut. We know that a common mistake is to either under-tighten or over-tighten this nut.
Tip number 3 is about reassembly of any unit that has an upper stud-style mounting. During shock absorber reassembly, if the stud doesn't have enough thread showing to start the nut, it's probably because the wheel or axle is hanging down. You'll need to raise the axle or lower the vehicle to position the shock and push the stud through the bushings. Don't use the nut to force or draw the stud upward because this could damage the threads. On a strut, the upper stud attaches to the strut mount. The key here is to use a torque wrench set to the manufacturer's specification.
Let's take another look at the shock upper mounting area. Tip number 4 is to carefully assemble the bushings and washers in the correct order. Don't use an air impact gun and only tighten the assembly enough to slightly bulge the rubber bushings. Under-tightening could cause a rattle, and over-tightening will damage the components.
Tip number 5 is a bit more complicated, but adding an extra procedure here can really avoid some big problems later. It's called clocking the strut and mount. On most struts, the spring plate, the spring, and the strut mount could be assembled incorrectly. All 3 components must be matched to each other in the correct position. We call this the clock position. The easiest way to know that you'll be able to match the original position is to mark the old components before you disassemble the strut from the mount. Simply use a marker on the spring plate, spring, and on the mount so that you can match them up again during reassembly.
The 6th tip is really just a good recommendation. Whenever you replace a strut, replace the strut mount too. This insulator supports the vehicle. It's pulled and pushed as many as 1,500 times for every mile driven. And when the old mount is installed on a new strut, the most common comeback is a new noise or vibration. On a front strut, most mounts also include the bearing plate. This is the steering pivot, and again, the best insurance is a new one.
The last tip, number 7, can make or break the customer's overall satisfaction. The best advice I have for that is to sell them the right part. Be sure to ask the customer whether they want to restore their vehicle's originally designed handling and control, or would they prefer something more or less than OE performance. If you fail to do this, the customer may be dissatisfied because they could think that the new ride is too firm, too soft, or that there was no improvement at all. The customer may not understand that they have a choice and not all products are the same. By the way, be sure to see if the old shock has a high pressure decal. This means that the OE unit is a monotube design and should be replaced with a monotube design.
That's one of the main reasons why the KYB product purpose lineup is so clear. The GR2 XLG products are twin tube and calibrated to restore OE performance, and the monotube Monomax and Gas Adjust are designed with increased damping rates over the OE twin tube design to add performance, or when the vehicle came with a monotube, it's the OE replacement.
Hey, thanks for watching. Here's a recap of our favorite 7 tips.